In this video I'll be making this end grain cutting board. It's also got an inlay using black epoxy putty. I shall now cut the sapele into 45mm strips. Those will form the bricks when I cut them across the end grain. I've got a much better idea. The gripper. Much better. Easy. I'm going to be using maple to create the mortar effect between the bricks. I can now edge the fence over another 5mm and keep running strips off to that size. When the board's unglued up, I shall have the maple in between, so it should give the effect of mortar between bricks. I want to make sure that the sapele is the exact same width as the maple, and with the gripper that's really easy. I've removed the extra foot that was on the right hand side, just simply unscrews. So I've got a much thinner leg on this side now, and I'll just drop down the supporting leg to stop me from tipping as I push the wood through. So I'll just make sure that that's butted up against the fence, and I'll just run it through. Simple. I have to say, the gripper, I've watched that many videos and reviews about it, and to be honest I thought it was a bit too good to be true, but since I've got my hands on it I can really see what everybody has been talking about, and I can see what the fuss is all about. It's just so simple to use. With woodworking, safety has got to be the #1 priority, and I think you've got to show respect to the tool, but you can't be scared of it. You've got to be confident with what you're doing, and that's what the gripper lets you do. You can be confident with every cut that you make. I used to use just a simple push stick, something like this. As you can see, the surface area that you would be holding on the wood is nothing compared to the grips underneath this. So if I was pushing through a piece of wood like this with just that at the end, I'd have to get my fingers really close to the blade, or just risk that the wood will lift up and kick back at me. I've got no worries at all with the gripper. I lost the footage of me gluing together the sapele and the maple, but as you can see from what's on the screen now, I literally just glued them sapele maple just to make it look like a brick pattern. And this is after it's been clamped up and left overnight to dry. Okay, what I need to do is I need to square up one of the sides so I can start ripping the lengths. Now, the best way I could think to do it was to actually use the gripper, and if you can see from this angle, the wood isn't actually in contact with the fence, but I've butted the gripper up to the fence, so it's kind of acting like a jointer. So I'll be using the gripper as a guide, keeping the gripper tight up against the fence, which will then push the piece of wood through parallel to the blade to give me a straight edge. I'll see how it works out. Now that I've got a somewhat straight edge, I'll run that straight edge up against the fence now to clean up the other side. I've now set the fence 25mm away from the blade. That'll form the actual depth of the chopping board. So that will actually be placed. This will be the top, the end grain. So from the top, to make it like a brick pattern, I'll just shim across to make the maple in between each brick and alternate that pattern. This is what the pattern will look like, but obviously with maple between the long joints. Now I wanted to show you this because it's clear all these gaps from when I was clamping it up. The pressure must have lifted and pushed up at some of the joints. Now if I had a jointer, I could have just run it through and made one big flat edge, but it's going to look like I'm going to have to hit it with the orbital sander to flatten those edges down. I've changed my mind again. I'm going to lay the flattest edge I've got against the fence and run the one strip through, giving me a straight edge, and then I can adjust the fence back to straighten up the other edge. And I'll do that with all the pieces. I wouldn't have even dreamed of doing this cut without the gripper, so it's a good job that I've got it. That's now straightened up that edge, so I can flip it over, move the fence slightly closer to straighten up the other edge, but I've got to do the other pieces first. It's clearly not perfect, but I think the joints are definitely a lot closer now, and hopefully with the maple in between, the gap should be just minute. I've gone ahead and cut some more 5mm strips of maple to do the horizontal mortar section really. I'll just glue that up now. I've cut 4 blocks of the end grain of a piece of olive wood because I like the way the lines go across. I'm going to run a 26mm strip along the top and bottom of the wall pattern, so I just need to cut these in half now. So I've set the fence 26mm away from the blade and I'll run them through using the gripper. Once again I've changed my mind. I was going to do 2 rows of the olive wood, but instead I'm just going to do one at the bottom. I thought it might look a bit like either a dirt track or something like that at the bottom of the wall. It's been left overnight now to dry, and this is what I'm left with. Now I know it looks really tatty. I can see that I've got gaps along the bottom, which is completely my fault where I haven't aligned it properly while clamping up, but I can fix that. And if you ever come across problems like that where you think that it's looking bad or it's not turning out how you think it might, you've got to be persistent, you've got to push on, and you've got to have some faith that it will turn out right in the end. This is what I'm left with after doing that. Just a little bit of sanding. And this is what I've got after a good 20 minutes sanding. I've just finished filling in the accidental gaps, deliberate artistic holes, so I can make the wall look like it's old and it's started to crumble. It wasn't a mistake at all, I definitely meant to do it. But I'll let that wood glue dry now and I'll start sanding it all over again. I want a frame for around my chopping board, so I've cut some lengths of sapele to 25mm wide, and now I'm going to make the mitres on the corners. I'll use the chopping board itself to actually measure where I need to place my next mitre. I'm just butting the interior of the 45-degree angle up to the one edge, and I'll make a mark where the other corner meets, and then I'll do another line, if you can see that, to show which direction I need the other motor to go in. And that's what it will look like with the frame round. Now as you can see, these are a bit taller than the actual chopping board, and my reason for this, I want the edges to act a bit like a leg, because of having such a large flat surface. If the countertop that you place it on isn't level, it's got a chance of rocking, whereas it's just going to be resting on the thin edges, so that should help to stabilise it. As you can probably tell, I really struggled with this glue up, but I've saved myself some time and filled the gaps that I can see now, so when I come to sand it, I haven't got to sand it twice. I've installed a round over bit, and I'm now going to go around all the perimeter on the top and the bottom of the workpiece. I've completed the round over on all the edges, and I've now come to my bedroom, and I've placed on a template of a vector of an old style tree with no leaves on, to contrast against the brick wall and the olive wood, which I think looks like a dirt track. I did have some other designs that I printed off because I wasn't sure which one would look best. So I'd got another style of tree, I'd got chef's hat with a moustache, which I was thinking about centering, and I'd also drawn a hand with a chopping knife that I would have done just coming in from the side, but I decided in the end to go with this tree. I think it suits the board best. Now I'm going to be using this small mini craft tool, which is very similar to a Dremel, and I've got a straight, I think it'd be classed as a grinding bit, but it is metal, to take away the material. Now obviously, ideally, it'd be best to use a router, but the smallest router bit I've got is 1/4 inch, so I haven't got that option. So I'm going to give this a go. I'm starting with this camera angle, like a first person view, but if I have to change it so I can actually see what I'm doing, then I'll have to change the camera angle, but I'll see how it goes first. I can alter the speed, and then I'll just take it steady. Hopefully if you can see that, I'm planning on going round just the perimeter, and then I can remove the sticker and work on removing the inside bulk of the material. And that's the result once it's finished. I want to fill in the tree that I've just created using epoxy, and I was searching online and I found this product. It's called Milliput. It's actually an epoxy based putty. It comes in 2 packs, 2 sticks. This is like a cream coloured one, and the other one's black, because I obviously want to fill it in with the black colour. And according to the instructions, you just knead it together. It works a bit like Play-Doh, and it should set rock solid in 3 to 4 hours. It's completely waterproof, and it's designed to be used on things like cars and radiators and boilers and stuff like that, but it's obviously also suitable for wood and plastics and everything you can think normal epoxy is. So I'll get that mixed together and I'll come back. I've got that mixed together now, so I can start to work it in to the gaps I've created. When it's set, I'll be able to sand it back down flush. I don't know if you could notice when I was doing it, when I started to scrape off the excess, it was pulling the material out rather than leaving it in the grooves I'd created. So I think this is all I'm going to be able to do. I'll see what happens. That's completely dry now and it looks an absolute mess. So let's hope that sanding can help me out. Well, the trunk's coming through. Well, that was a lot easier than expected. I can clean up the other bits now. Well, I'm really happy with how that's turned out now. I'm going to apply an oil finish to it, and what I'll be using is raw linseed oil. Now, if I'm going to be using linseed oil, it has to be the raw version, because the boiled linseed oil isn't food safe. It's only the raw linseed oil that is 100% food safe. Now, this is obviously where there was some glue residue left, but I think you'll agree I've done enough sanding, so I would have expected there wouldn't be none left. But there's not much I can do about it now. I can just say it adds to the effect of the old-fashioned wool. And this is the completed chopping board. So let's give it a try. So let's see if it actually works as a chopping board. I've got a better idea. Ripper. Well, that seems to work.